Welcome to Applied Speaking, a podcast where I take you with me on my learning journey of becoming a better public speaker. I interview public speaking experts and let them live coach me. At the end of each episode, I'll ask the guests to give me some homework. And if you're serious about improving your speaking yourself, you can join me in doing the homework. You can reach out to me about your progress and your findings. In this episode, Emmy talks a lot about the Ultraspeaking framework. She explains the philosophy behind it, and we're going to play the games they developed. In between our practice sessions, we reflect on the exercise, and I ask her some questions about how public speaking came across in her life and how it improved her life. I think one of the most interesting aspects of this podcast was where she explained how public speaking can improve your conversations and how those conversations can improve your connection with other people. I think that's important and so interesting to learn more about, so I think you'll do too. Let's dive into it. I have my very first guest today here, which is Emmy Sobieski. And I wanted to introduce her first by a few facts about her, which I find quite interesting and extraordinary. In 1999, you run the #1 fund while competing at Olympic level for dressage. You were qualified for the US World Cup trials for dressage as well. And you ran your first 50K at age 50. And you started bodybuilding at national level, and you even became the national champion at age 51 in bodybuilding. So that's remarkable, that's extraordinary. And we've met each other a few times before this, but because at first you were my client, I made a presentation for you, because you now give workshops about your experience. And those workshops are about you're being a specialist in nutrition, exercise, and mental resilience. And now you're telling people about this and you're giving them workshops. And shortly after that, you became my public speaking coach. And that was my first contact with public speaking, actually. So you introduced me to learning about this skill. And I am just super curious how the list of the facts I just mentioned to you, where public speaking came across in your life. When did you first come across public speaking? Why did you decide to, after all those other things, decide to become a public speaker and even a public speaker coach?
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I had done some public speaking throughout my life, and I found when I was super passionate about something, then it was easy to speak in public about it. For instance, when I was running the #1 fund, I would give presentations, and I was really excited about all the stocks. It all came naturally. And then there were other times where I was raising money or giving a PowerPoint, and I would get all tongue-tied and caught up, and I couldn't really figure that out. And at some point after 25 years in institutional investing, I moved into co-founding a couple of companies. And when I would go on the road and raise money, I was speaking still. I was passionate about what we were doing, but for some reason, I was getting a little bit caught up and tongue-tied. And so I hired several public speaking coaches, and the more that we worked on things like they say that as you're finishing a sentence, it should go bum, bum, bum. Mm-hmm. And that you're going to have certain words, and then within certain words, you emphasize certain pieces of those words. Then I was going to Toastmasters, and they count the number of ums you do, and I was trying all of this stuff. And what I found I found two things. One, I can recognize speakers that have had that training because they will finish their sentences like this, and they will emphasize certain parts of a word, and it doesn't feel natural. So, and I think we're getting to a point right now in terms of how many people are trying to be influencers, thought leaders, trying to run businesses online, where we're having a backlash against that type of speaking in general, because it doesn't feel like you and I are having a conversation, and so it doesn't build intimacy, which is the main point of speaking on video as well as speaking in person. So I kind of was struggling, and then I was riding at the horse barn, and this woman says to me, she goes, "Oh, Emmy, I just read this book about ultra learners." She's like, "You're an ultra learner. You learn all this stuff. You know all these languages." And I'm like, "Cool, I want to read a book about me. That sounds awesome." And so I'm in the first chapter, and it's by Scott Young. It's called Ultralearning. And I'm in the first chapter, and he basically says everyone, when he talks about ultra learners, the fact that you can learn 20 languages and you can learn all this stuff, people just say, well, that's not possible. That's just a super smart person. And so he chose to pick 10, 15 of friends that he knew were smart, but not extraordinary, not all Einsteins, and to have each of them learn a non-adjacent skill. And so one of his friends was Tristan Montebello, who was a computer programmer. His first language was French. He was born in France. And Scott said to Tristan, "Do you want to try public speaking, learning public speaking, and do it for a study for my book?" And Tristan then using ultra learning principles, became the fastest person to make it to the top 10 in the Toastmasters World Championship ever. And so this chapter in the book was about this. And they talked about the fact that we've all been speaking since we were 2. We've been practicing for a long time. It's not that we don't know how to speak, it's that we get in the way, that all of this governor brain, the cerebral cortex, our analytical mind, we're analyzing our performance instead of just talking to someone and being natural. And so they talk about how to get you back into that natural flow. They had a bunch of games. I immediately put down the book. I only read the first chapter, got on their website, signed up, and went up to Santa Monica. I was living in San Diego at the time. Went up to Santa Monica twice a week for 3-hour stints of training with them. And they completely changed my life in 6 sessions. And I think I've mentioned to you, it was like 4 years of therapy in 6 sessions with them.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, it's so cool to hear. I also read the book, I think a while ago. I think 1 year ago I read the book, and I also saw the chapter on Tristan, and I think it was super cool, but I didn't picture myself doing something similar, but because it was just something I would, I think, be afraid of doing. Also because maybe in English wasn't my first language, and I wasn't really comfortable in speaking in English. So the first session we did was super interesting and really new for me to learn about this. And you just mentioned the concept of coming in a state of flow and using play to just turn off your internal filter and let your mind flow and just come up with whatever. And I think if I remember we did 4 training sessions now, and if I remember the first one, it was just an hour of making fun, because we were just laughing all the time, and I had to say really stupid things, and I was trying to be too smart and dumb it down, etc., stuff like that. So it was a really nice learning experience for me, and a completely different learning experience from how I used to approach other things I'm learning, like things in university. I expected to need to read something, for example, before we hopped on the first call, and you were just like, no, you don't have to do anything, we just hop on and we play some games, it's gonna be fun, don't worry about it. So why do you think that's the right approach to learning about public speaking?
Well, honestly, I think it's the right approach to learning about anything. If you think about kids, before they go to formal school, they spend so much time in play and they learn so fast. And then we go to school and we're told to turn everything off except our brains. So in a way, we become totally disembodied, unaware of our emotions, unaware of even how our body is feeling. And we're just turned into these thinking machines, which is great. Our brains are great, but that's not all of us. And so taking play back into it brings all of your resources to bear to learn. And you think about how fast kids learn. And that's not all youth. It's also how they learn. And so we can learn from kids in terms of how they learn and bring play back in, bring embodiment back in with the game Conductor, where you're really jumping into your energy, which then drives your emotion, which then helps your mind pick words. So it's really just about play accelerating learning and making it more fun. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I really like that concept. Also, because the fundamental philosophy, I think, behind the Ultraspeaking is that you are a great speaker inside. You already do it quite a lot, but you just need to be able to do it also in more stressful situations. So all the games that we're going to play from the Ultraspeaking course or the Ultraspeaking website are designed to put some stress on me, the practitioner, so that in a more stressful situation, I'm also able to speak like I speak to my friends at more at just relaxed situations.
Yeah.
I think that's really fun to experience, and it might be just fun to dive into the first exercise at this point, and then afterwards we can explain what happened or just have some reflection on it.
That sounds awesome.
Okay, so can you explain the game to people who might be just listening to this podcast instead of also watching the video?
Yeah, so all of these games are designed to create pressure, and they're designed to do different things. So if you say, oh, I know that I have stories inside me, I'm so natural when I talk to my friends, but then when I get in front of different people, or someone puts pressure on me, or someone even that is just mean to you, that's a friend that you get tongue-tied with because they're kind of a friend and they're kind of mean, or they're someone that you know, or someone at work where you get tongue-tied. You can say, whenever someone says something mean, I don't have those words just snap and come back. And there's other games, so that's analogies, rapid fire. There's other games in here where if someone gets way off track, if you tend to talk and then get off on some tangent a lot, there's games that actually tempt you to do that so that you remember to come back. There's other games if you speak in too much of a monotone and you don't have the range you want, that you practice the range. So there's games for anything that you particularly think that you might want to get better at, that you want to strengthen that muscle, and then you strengthen the muscle with play so that all of you is in the game and all of you is improving and you have all your resources for yourself.
All right.
So this particular game is called Analogies Rapid Fire, and this is training your Google autocomplete, or I don't know if we should say it's branded as Google, but your brain's autocomplete that we all have. And this actually came about because Tristan de Montebello, the head of Ultraspeaking, he was training for the World Championships for Toastmasters. And as he was going around and doing the competitions, he had this one speech he was using, and everybody's saying, you're amazing, you're amazing. And he would tell the story much better than I would. But they were saying how incredible and how fast of a rise he made, etc. But for the World Championships, you have to use a new speech. And so they had to start over, and he'd been using this speech and perfecting this speech for the entire set of trials coming up to it. And So now he had to start from scratch and just kept kind of bumbling along and having it not work. And Michael Gendler, who was his partner and coach in this, said, well, why don't we just go into one of these Toastmaster meetings and just speak. Don't have anything prepared. And Tristan did it, and through that they realized that we all have this autocomplete that just happens and in our minds. And so this game really reminds you that you have it, and it gives you analogies that are completely ridiculous. And so you realize that you can still tie them together, and even if you don't, your audience makes sense of it after the fact. So it's just getting used to the first thing that flashes into your mind, you say it and you move on. So I'm giving Pim 3 seconds to complete an entire sentence, and we're going to do 12 rounds. Are you ready, Pim?
Yeah, let's start. Online dating is like a bowl of ice cream because it's cold. Money is like napping because you're relaxed. The future is like dinosaurs because they're not old but young. Folding laundry is like toilets because you try to flush them. Learning a new skill is like skydiving because you take a deep dive. Time is like daydreaming because you tend to get away. Teamwork is like wine bottles because they're stuck together. Breathing is like rocket science because it isn't complicated. A pet is like popsicles because they just pop. My body is like meditation because we are one. A college degree is like philosophy because it's good to think about. Getting married is like sleeping in because you try to do it.
Nice. Okay. So what's your reflection on that?
Okay, so we did this game quite often but at this point, so I was familiar with not trying to sound too smart and stuff like that. But I still was kind of aware of the fact that right now I'm recording a podcast and people are going to listen to this, so it's a bit weird if I just keep saying stupid stuff, but also because I already know that it's dangerous to think too much about these things because you only have 3 seconds and you want to get the flow starting and just want the auto-completion to kick in. I think I managed to stay in the game and just say words instead of tripping over them and instead of skipping a few of them or taking too long. So it was getting quite okay, I think. Maybe I was trying to be too smart, but
I think it's a great first start, and yeah, I could hear you catching yourself and going back to the flow.
Yeah.
And yeah, so and some people may think on here, well, it's not as easy because English isn't your first language.
Mm-hmm.
That mostly is not true. We have found, and Tristan, they've done this with people that say, yeah, well, English isn't my first language, and they have them do some of these exercises in their native language, and they still have the same problem. So the real overriding thing is, how much in the flow are you? How much are you playing? And are you starting to overthink? So let's try one more to keep in that flow. Yeah. Keep it quick. Just really think quick, and dumb it down. Here we go.
Yeah. Public speaking is like an iPhone because you can't take pictures during it. An overcooked meal is like a camel because it's in the desert. Finding your passion is like artificial intelligence because you keep looking for it. The world is like marijuana because it's so high. Chasing money is like a glazed donut because it's full of sugar. Staying up late is like taking risks because you're risking your life. Life is building a bridge because it's with meeting different people. Fear is like kissing on the lips because it's so nice. Energy is like having kids because they are full of energy. Fear is like a bicycle because it keeps coming back. A museum is like a spaceship because it's so shiny. Business is like beards because they are so long. Okay.
Did you feel yourself really get into the flow there?
I actually did. I think this is a better session than we used to do in the beginning of our training sessions. So I was I was a bit not really afraid, but excited for this podcast because it's all about these games are all about creating stress, and one of these stress factors is you listening to me, and that I might sound stupid to you, or that I want to come across as a smart guy to you. And now I have this whole other people that are listening also to this podcast, so it makes me a bit more self-conscious. But I was excited for that because it's a better learning opportunity for sure, to just know that this is happening and being under a little more stress than usual, and just trying to do the same games, and actually trying to reach a point where I have a blank mind, where I lose my words and don't know what to say, because then I can recover from that, and then that's the real training, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point. We should maybe jump into rapid fire analogies with breath to show how you can recover.
Yeah.
So the idea is exactly what you just said, which is there's two things going on. One is you can trust your Google autocomplete to come up with something. Mm-hmm. The obvious argument to that is, well, if I'm in a business setting, if I'm giving a keynote, if I'm giving a presentation, and I say something stupid, first of all, I don't want to count on my audience to make it make sense. And what then? So this shows you that you can recover from anything, and it demonstrates that taking a breath really allows you to ground and let your entire brain settle for a moment and come up with great ideas.
Yeah.
Okay, ready? Here we go.
Yeah. Animals are like composting because they stink. I think everyone notices it when they have had an animal for a while, when they have had an animal living in their home for a while. Animals have a different smell than humans, so it's not that bad, because we used to live together in the past, and humans and animals lived together outside, and humans didn't really have those cleaning habits for sure that they have in these modern ages, like right now. So that's why humans tend to smell better, and that's why we by now notice the smell of animals, which can be kind of the same as a composting.
You want to do another one?
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah, sure. Diversity is like fasting because it's so nice. Making tough decisions is like a new car because it's shiny.
Now you're taking a deep breath in, deep breath out.
Making tough decisions is hard, and you really need to take your time, think about it. But you also don't need to do it every time again. For example, if you just are in front of a tough decision and you're using all of your mental capacity to try to wrap your head around it, ask all people around you to agree on which decision you're going to make, you're just not making a decision right away. Sometimes you just have to follow your instinct, and like when choosing a car, you just have to choose a car and make the decision. That was quite hard, but it was better because I was, it was a bit more it was a weirder sentence that I said with making, it was a weirder, sentence I completed. So that's why it was harder to recover from.
Yeah, the more you make a mess, the more challenging it is.
Yeah.
What's going on for you during the pause when you're taking a deep breath in and deep breath out?
Okay, so right now I think I was a bit not really in panic, that's too overstated, but just thinking like, okay, what the fuck am I going to say about this, because this is kind of weird, so how can I still try to structure this, and how can I give it a nice structure, and what story can I come up with?
Okay, so this next one, let's try during the pause, try more of a meditation feeling where you just take a deep breath in, deep breath out. The most important thing is that you're grounded because you already know that your mind is going to come up with a great answer.
Yeah.
And we know that from doing analogies rapid fire, that you have the answer within. So let's try to just get grounded and just breathe in and breathe out.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's interesting because I notice quite a lot of the when I'm having a conversation with people, I often tend, when it's a difficult conversation, I often tend to take long pauses, and then I try to think about how I'm going to formulate something. But those pauses where I'm trying to formulate something in my head aren't really helping me in formulating and having better things to say. So it makes sense that you say that you just need to go into a more meditative state and don't worry about what you're going to say. Just take your breath and take a pause for a moment and then start talking again, and then it all flows out of your brain from itself.
Exactly. And what I'm actually also recommending is just to try it, right? So this is like play. With play, you just try new things. So you tried using the pause to come up with a new thing. So try using this pause to get centered and grounded. And you may use a different pause to do something else. It's really finding what works for you and trying a bunch of different clothes on effectively.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Ready?
Yeah. My mood is like a camel because it's bumpy. Breathing is like a bowl of ice cream because it's cold sometimes. Online dating is like feeling lonely because we're all bound to it. I think it's interesting that when you start to date online, that you do it on your own. Not only do you try to do it on your own, but that's most of the time the first time you try to start online dating. But other times you probably have some friends around you who are pushing you into the online dating, so it's not an experience that you pursue on your own. Sometimes it's a bit like just being too much on your own and okay. Okay, the time's up and I couldn't quite make something out of this. Yeah.
And what went on during the pause?
Well, I for sure wasn't in a meditative state. I think I was still thinking about it. I think so. Yeah, I was. Okay, what went on during the pause was that I was still finishing my sentence also for the stuff I just said, because I was still thinking about something else to say, because I was still trying to come up with a better suggestion than the one I was that was popping up in my head. So I think it wasn't really the best strategy to pursue it like that, and that's why it was such a failure, let's say, I think.
Okay, so no failure, all just playing and trying.
Yeah, you're right.
But let's so that sounds like a great strategy to just dumb it down and blurt out the first thing that comes to your mind. I want you to try during this pause to force yourself into the meditative state. You know, when you think about somebody says, well, just say anything but red car, then that's all you think about, right? And so during the pause, anything that you think about to say to clean it up is off limits.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So any thoughts, so online dating is like feeling lonely, and then I start to say, okay, this might work, that might work. All of those go in the trash.
Yeah, okay.
So that when you go to clean it up, you can use anything except the thoughts that came to your head.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Energy is like expired pickles because they're sour. The ocean is like CPR because it's full of waves. When you're trying to do CPR, you don't do it all at once. You try to do it in multiple ways, and you try a whole lot of stuff, and you just need to readjust to the situation. So whatever you think you might have practiced for CPR, if you're in a situation where you need to use CPR, it's going to be different. So you need to keep adjusting to the situation and really try stuff. Like the waves in the ocean, you need to try stuff over and over again, and then you're more likely to succeed. Okay, that was way better. That felt way better.
Yes, much better, much better. So what was going on in the pause there for you?
I, for a second, thought about a story or situation, or I just saw someone in my head lying on the ground. But after that it was quiet, because I thought, okay, let's not think about anything, because then I can't use it in the story I'm going to tell.
And that's an interesting other use for this game, which is active listening.
Yeah.
In that, if I'm talking and you're truly active listening, you're not thinking, okay, what am I going to say in response to what she's saying?
Yeah.
And so one way to do that is to train yourself that whenever someone's talking, whatever thoughts you come up with while they're talking, you are not allowed to use in your response.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's very cool, and I think that's definitely an effect I'm experiencing of our trainings, that when I'm having just a regular conversation with friends, I'm just hanging out with friends, then I'm at some occurrences able to just be more present, because I can try to focus on listening to them and not keeping track of what I also want to say in the discussions we have or in the conversations we have, because that's only distracting me. And sometimes you think you just have a very nice or profound thought that you really need to share. Yeah, I wouldn't say if it was that important, then it'll come back to you, but something else will come up if you just let it go and pursue the conversation. And I think the conversation will flow in a much more natural way in that way also, because you're not trying to keep track of stuff that someone said a few sentences ago, but you're just responding to when you need to respond to them.
Yeah, and then you're prioritizing the connection.
Yeah.
Instead of effectively your own ego and what you thought was you were going to say, which is so important. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And the person feels like you're holding space for them, and then that builds your connection.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think how did it change things in your life, for example, when you did a lot of coaching like this, or did a lot of practice like this? Did it change your relationship with people around you because you were able to connect better?
Yeah, and for sure, for me, as I discussed, I was not a talented public speaker, and I think I'm also not super talented at active listening. One of my first experiences really learning active listening was with a longer kind of weekend yoga retreat. And they had us go on a walk with someone, and they just paired us up, and you walked and you listened to the other person, and then you just repeated what they said to them. So you were really mirroring them, and then you would say something, and then they would say, I hear you saying this. Very, very basic. And it was super hard for me, and at the same time I never felt more connected with another person. And I think there's a part, if you're energetic and dynamic, and I have a family with a lot of energetic, dynamic, narcissist type people, talking is a competitive sport. So I'm going to say this really amazing thing, and you're going to say this really amazing thing, and so you can go to a party and you can talk to people, and you share your great story, they share their great story, you share another great story, they share a related story. You even feel like you're having a conversation together because you're sharing, oh yeah, and I knew a time when this, and oh yeah, so it feels supportive, it feels together, and you go home and you think, gosh, I must be an introvert because I'm wiped out. I am wiped out. But it's not active listening and it's not connecting. And you compare that to a time where you just hang out with your friend and they totally hold a space for you. They ask follow-up questions, they notice your mood, and you go home from that and you feel completely full in your heart, like your cup is full. And to me, that's the difference between whether someone's active listening or you're basically competitive speaking. So I was more of a competitive speaker. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I can then explain all of the building blocks to being a good active listener because I had to learn it the hard way. And yeah, I saw that a lot with horse riding. Some of the greatest horse riders, they can hop on any horse and the horse will just perform. And so then they're training someone and the person hops on the horse and the trainer's like, well, just do it. What's your problem? And the rider's kind of like, I don't know how. And he's like, the guy's like, well, yeah, just sit on the horse and he does it. I don't know what your problem is. So it's great to have people that are super talented, that are an Einstein of the world, a Michael Jordan of the world, because we have something really inspiring to try to reach for. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I think that it's most helpful to just have someone that's gone through the similar struggles to be able to say, here is each element to get you to the next level.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, I think that's cool that you can relate those experiences from your coaching and athletic experiences from the past with the public speaking coaching experience as well.
It's all learning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to try where you make a mess and I clean it up?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Okay.
A promise is like getting a new puppy because it's so cute. Drinking tea is like getting a haircut because you can't do it early enough. Business is like breaking up because it's tiring.
The first time I broke up, I was just a wreck. And most of the time when I've broken up, I've been the one doing the breaking up. But it still wears you down. And business can be the same. We think business is great all the time, and we're out there and we're moving and shaking. But sometimes business is about saying no. And you're going to disappoint someone, and it's really going to wear you out over time.
Nice, very nice. I always like it how something like that can turn into something that sounds really profound, when at the beginning it was just, okay, try to fix this mess and just start speaking, and then it begins to flow and something will come up. Cool.
Yeah, nice. Do you want to do the opposite? Do you want me to make a mess and you clean it up?
Yeah, let's do it.
Life is like a broken finger because it hurts.
Right now in the Netherlands it's snowing. When I'm looking outside of my window, it's snowing for the first time in, I think, more than 600 days. So that also means that it's a bit slippery outside. And you're far more likely to fall outside when you're on your bicycle, for example. When you fall, you'll probably hurt something, and in my case it was my finger. My finger hurted so much all the day, and I couldn't think about anything else. And because my whole mind was occupied with my finger hurting, it's just like in life where you only think about what your mind is occupied with, and that is going to be your life in that moment.
Nice.
Yeah. was better, a bit over time, but I think I managed to wrap it up in a...
Yeah, I'm glad. And that's an important thing, is you have to make choices, right? And I think you made the right choice in terms of going a little over time and finishing strong, which is a key strategy.
Yeah.
As much as we're playing, it's still important to finish strong.
Yeah, exactly. To train.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, cool. I think it's just...
Do you want to...
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, with our work on active listening, do you want to talk a little bit about how, and we can both talk about it, how this ends up being similar to therapy but not therapy?
Yeah, I was just about to ask you, so I would love
perfect.
so please
Great
talk
minds
about
think
it.
alike.
Exactly. Yeah, please share your story behind it.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned that I'd been in a family of narcissists, which is a nice way to say is a little bit of a tough upbringing. And so I'd been to therapists and tried a lot of different things. Some of it just felt to me like picking away at scabs and not really moving forward. And then I worked with some therapists where it was much better because it was closer to cognitive behavioral therapy, which is what actions in my life are holding me back. What things do I do? What thoughts do I do that are actually holding me back from living my best life? And that was still better. And so then when I came to Michael and Tristan over those 6 days in Santa Monica, I just said to them one day, I'm like, God, this is like 4 years of therapy. And one of the reasons is, and they were like, oh yeah, whatever, Emmy, you know, that's awesome. We're happy you're happy, right? And they're like, that's kind of a weird thing to say. And recently when they launched their podcast, they mentioned this and they said, now so many people have said that to them that they actually take it seriously. So they didn't take it seriously when I said it to them. But I believe that it's two things. One is the most important, that we all feel that we deserve to take up space in the world. And whether you think you already do and you think you're fine and you think you're great, it comes up in the pause. Are you willing to sit there for 4 or 5 or 10 or 15 seconds with an audience of 400 people and say nothing? And just have them wait. And that really triggers a lot of people thinking, well, I've got to be delivering something. I've got to be delivering value. And the truth is that we are all worthy just being ourselves, not doing anything, not delivering anything, not giving anything, just being. The second piece of it is, of course, that yes, what we have to say is important, but what's important to the audience is how they interpret what we say. And so if we're speaking the entire time, they have no mental space to interpret what we're saying. And so our pause is a gift to the audience to allow the snow in the snow globe, so to speak, is what the Ultraspeaking guys say, to kind of settle, to allow you to make it your own. So I say what I'm saying, and then you have a chance to soak it in and make it your own and see how it's relevant to you, see how it can help you in your life. So all of these things come back to that each and every one of us is a full and whole person, just being, not doing, not giving, just being, and that we all deserve to take up space in the world. And feeling that and being basically needing to take pauses, being told to take pauses, jumping into that moment, you are practicing this idea that you deserve to take up space in the world instead of thinking about it and talking about it. You're just taking up space and feeling how it feels. And so for me, it was like 4 years of therapy because I jumped forward so far in my ability to be comfortable taking up space in the world.
Oh, cool.
I'd love to hear from you how it's affected you so far, on a more emotional basis.
Well, first of all, thanks for sharing this story. I heard you talking about it sometimes, but not in detail like this. So I think that's very interesting to hear. About my own life, I'm kind of experiencing stuff similar like to what you're saying. So one of the things I was like afraid of in the last couple of years and maybe even in my teenage years was just being comfortable in speaking in English. And it was extra like painful is too exaggerated, but just like a little bit hurting because my close friends around me are super good at speaking in English, and they always know how to say it. They're good with vocabulary, grammar, just regular conversation, etc. So I kind of sucked in this, and I was kind of holding myself back because I was a bit ashamed about it and stuff like that. And I noticed in the past few years that when there were situations where I had to talk in English because an English or international friend of someone was over, then I was or trying to hide from the situation or just really uncomfortable in the situation and really getting into myself, getting more quiet and a bit introverted. So that was something that's something I'm sometimes struggling with. And lately I've been getting on a lot of sales calls for my design agency, so that's helping a bit. But these trainings, the first public speaking training we did was I think I went from 40% comfortable to 80% comfortable in speaking in English. It was really a tremendous difference in before and after those sessions. And I think sessions are really helping me to become comfortable in just saying words and don't trying to formulate some perfectly structured sentence before I'm going to speak it. Before I'm going to say it, I just try to start putting words out of my mouth, and then the ball will get rolling and I will say other things, and it's just more fluent and more I'm more in state of flow, and I'm more at ease, and I can easily speak like that. So it's like that helping me tons, and it's a huge difference from where I was, I think, even a month ago before our lessons. So also a big thank you for that, for helping me in that way, because that's just an amazing thing to experience in my life, because it was a struggle like that, and I think it's cool to overcome it. And that's the main advantage there is in it for me right now, to just being more comfortable speaking in English. But also I noticed the same in being more able to be present in having just regular conversations with my friend. That's also just amazing to experience and to experiment with.
That's cool. And do you do you find you start thinking in English, or do you still translate back and forth between Dutch and English?
So I'm not really sure if I find myself thinking in English, because I'm not really sure if that's a difference from what it used to be, because I already tried to do that in a way, but it wasn't really happening. It was more formulating the sentence I was going to say than really thinking English. So I think, but I'm not quite sure about this. But I did notice I stopped to formulate those sentences, and I don't do the translation thing anymore, where I just think about what I'm going to say in Dutch and then try to translate it and then going to say it in English. So yeah, that's a huge filter to take away, and that's better.
Yeah. I finally felt comfortable speaking German when I knew when I would be over there to be in Germany for a while.
Yeah.
And And then I'd be walking around and there'd be like this thing going in my head, all in German.
Yeah.
I'd get a rant, I'd have a German rant going, I'd be upset about something or I'd be excited about something, it'd all be in German. And I would be living in Germany maybe 3-4 months at one point, and I came back to Florida. I'm like trying to come up with the English words for things.
Yeah, cool.
But I can't remember that word in English, but here's what it is in German. Yeah. And that's when I knew I'd made the total shift. Yeah.
So do you think it helps you to learn new new languages faster?
When you can think in that language?
Yeah, but also this ultra speaking structure, so where you just try to start saying things and don't really think about how you're going to say them. The ultra speaking approach.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it brings you into flow in anything. Mm-hmm. We can request Michael and Tristan make this available in multiple languages. Yeah. I'm sure they would love that request. When you have them on the podcast, let them know.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, very cool. So there's another game that's really fun, which is my favorite. Which one are we going to do, Pim?
I think we're going to do Conductor.
Yes.
Let's go.
Conductor is my very favorite. And one of the things that happens when we put more pressure on, which is what we're trying to do with these games, because then whenever you're under pressure, you can speak really well. Mm-hmm. One of the things that happens when we put more pressure on is our natural range of speaking narrows. So if my natural range obviously is going to be on the higher end because I've got a lot of energy. So if my natural range is, say, a 4 to a 7, then my range is going to go 5 to a 6, and I'm going to sound monotone whenever I'm speaking. So what Conductor does is it stretches all your muscles to say, can you speak at a 10 and can you speak at a 0? And if you're someone like me, it takes a real shift in mentality, and this was another thing that happened with that was important to me in terms of just this idea of therapy, although it isn't therapy. Mm-hmm. But I noticed over time when I was just living my life that if someone would say something that had happened negative, like a human tragedy or something like that, I would try to say, oh, that's too bad, and then back to the good stuff right away. And I would brush it off. I wouldn't go sit in that uncomfortable feeling with that person, and so it wasn't leading to the level of connection that I could have had. And when I was doing Conductor, I would go down to a 1, and I would initially say something like, oh, my mother abandoned me. But I would say it with a smile, right? I'd be like, and then 1, you have to kind of be quieter. So I'd say, my mother abandoned me. And at some point Tristan says, why are you smiling? And so I was mechanically getting to a 1, but I wasn't living it. It wasn't becoming my own reality. Yeah. And so the real challenge here is to get into the energy of reflecting at that level, and have that then lead to the true emotion, so that you're coming across as truly as your authentic self. So that's, for me, that's really how Conductor created a major shift in me. Yeah. In that I can, and people feel it. I can connect with them.
I think that's cool because on a superficial level, this game looks like you're only trying to train what it's like to speak at a really loud level and at a really quiet level, but it's really far more about diving into the energy level and into the energy vibe, let's say. So yeah, cool.
Yeah, and again, to bring up, to find where are there any holes. Are there any places where you're uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Speaking, right? Are you, and explore why? so that then you can become comfortable at all of the different levels. And then you can choose what to use. You can choose when to share. You know, you don't have to go into a business meeting and start crying about your childhood. But you can tap into those, and you can use all those, and all those muscles are strong, and then you can use what serves you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna jump in and do conductor.
Okay, so the first time we did this exercise, I think in our first session, I forgot to mention to my roommate I was going to do this training, and I came into the living room after the training, and he was just looking at me like, "What happened in that room? What were you doing? What happened on the internet?" Because I was just
Why
screaming
were you yelling
to the
at your computer?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So now everyone is prepared. If they are at home, I'm going to scream, maybe. So let's dive into it.
Okay, let's go.
What we can learn from sound. I think I underestimated the importance of sound until I saw a certain video on YouTube. The video was all about trying to be there and trying to use your voice in all kinds of vocabulary ways and all kinds of ranges, so that you really think about the highs and the lows of using your voice, and not only about being quiet, so you really try to get everywhere and use all the different types inside of your
Good. Breathe. Nice. Tell me a secret.
So it was different when I started, even example, right before this podcast.
Switch.
I just was practicing all the levels of my voice. So I went from high ranges to low ranges and everything in between, and that's why my voice was so warmed up for this session, and that's why I try to always do that before I'm going to report a podcast session. I recommend all of you to reach all the ranges inside of your voice. So you can just try to come at the lowest whisper voice and the highest screaming. So you can reach it all when your voice is ready for the whole dynamic of what you're going to say.
Nice.
Okay, that was a fun one. And I was indeed right before this. I don't really remember, but I once saw a YouTube video of someone explaining how he warms up his voice before he goes on stage. So I tried to do this before the podcast, and I was like, I think it's funny because my heart was also beating quite fast before the podcast because I was a bit excited, and I could hear the heartbeats in my voice when I was just humming. So when I was doing it for a while, it eased, and that was nice to experience and relaxing.
That's cool. That's cool. And what do you think when you're doing the 0 to 10? How can that relate to you doing a sales call? Are you going to start yelling at prospects?
I don't think so, but I do have the, like, I don't know if permission is the right word, but I do feel like I have the permission or the capability of reaching a super high, energetic, enthusiastic state in that call. And I think that's really valuable because it's a bit boring when I'm just trying really at a really low voice to explain some stuff and explain some things about my pricing. But if I just explain to them how exciting it can be to work together and what the outcomes might be, that's weird if I start off like this, because then they're just like, okay, what's this guy doing? But if I use all the ranges from the 1 and then build up to the higher levels and build it even up to the 10, then I think that can be really exciting for people to listen to.
Cool. And so it's like you have tools in your toolkit, and you're developing muscles like at the gym, so that you have all of those, you have all those muscles worked so that you're able to pull out that tool and use it.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of a mixed metaphor, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Do you feel like you use these, well, of course, because you're speaking during all those workshops you give, but do you feel like what's helping you the most from these exercises?
I think what I was mentioning before in terms of not having not having a cohesive match between my energy and the subject. So if I'm talking about something serious or emotional,
Mm-hmm.
not to talk about it in an upbeat way,
Yeah.
but to really have everything match. And at the end of the day, then that means that we're meeting each other in a very authentic way. And I came across as inauthentic because I was uncomfortable going to those levels and sharing myself at those levels. And so now as I've become comfortable with that, then I can reach a connection wherever somebody else is at. I can meet them where they're at. So if they're in a low, I can meet them at the low. If they're in a high, I can meet them in a high, and really bring my whole self to the conversation. And for me, that's useful in business. I mean, people want to do business with people they like. So it's, of course, relevant in business. It may not be relevant in business for me to share what happened in my childhood, but it might, right? Someone in business may have also had an experience, and then you can have a deeper connection because it's all about people.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Okay, yeah, I think that's just a cool recurring theme that by being more present and by knowing how to be more present, you can connect more with the people you're talking to, and that's just super valuable to know something about.
Especially in these, I mean, isolation is a real true health risk.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my purposes of doing this, of just, I love coaching in general. I love coaching public speaking. And at the same time, the wellness company that I'm building is truly about self-care. And one of the main ways that we can improve our own health is by connecting with other people. And one of the biggest risks that it creates more high blood pressure, heart disease, inflammation is feeling isolated. So the more that you can connect with other people, it's good for your health, it's good for your psyche, it's good for everyone.
Yeah, I totally recognize it. I once read a tweet from someone who was coming up with a list like you can train for a marathon, you can wake up early each day, and you can try to have a really good nutrition profile and have a healthy weight, etc. All those kind of things. But if your relationships suck, then your life will probably suck. So if you invest in that, and I think by being able to connect better, so by being able to speak to them better and being more present, being able to connect better, that's just having advantages for your whole life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's being able to have your voice and feel comfortable in your voice, and then be able to listen and be able to know what's going on internally and match that so that you are authentic. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, cool. Yeah. Oh, so sorry. What did you say?
Oh no, I just didn't know if you wanted to play more games or what direction you wanted to go in.
Yeah, I think we can try to come up with the homework exercise you might have planned out for this session, because in line with what I said in the introduction of the podcast, I want to make this as actionable as possible. So only talking about public speaking isn't going to make you a better public speaker. And I'm going to do these homework exercises myself, and I encourage people listening to this to, if they're taking their if they're serious about becoming a better public speaker, then to just practice with me and just tweet me over some videos of them practicing, for example, so we can practice together. But yeah, I would really like to hear about the homework exercise you had planned.
Great. And to preface it, one of the most important parts of speaking is listening. So there are two sides. There are two sides to the coin. So I have 3 exercises for you to practice.
All right.
One is very similar to the analogies with breath, where one person speaks and then both take a breath and the other person completes it. Mm-hmm. So when you are in conversations with people, as you're in conversation with them, any thought that comes to your mind of how you're going to respond while they're speaking, you then throw that in the trash. So you're not allowed to say that.
Okay.
And you can practice that all week long. Anytime anyone is speaking and you're in a conversation, any thoughts that come to mind of how you're going to respond, throw them out. Those are not now allowed to be part of your response.
All right.
And then the moment that they're done, take a pause, and then you speak, and you can speak on anything except all the thoughts that came to your mind.
Okay, cool. I'm looking forward to that.
That will practice your Google autocomplete, and that will really improve your active listening. Pretty soon, less and less thoughts will come to your mind, and it builds trust that the right thoughts are going to be there for you when you need them. That new ones, even better ones, will come up.
Nice. Okay.
So that's number 1.
Yeah.
And number 2 is when you're speaking, and this is tougher when you're in conversations, because as soon as one person pauses, a lot of time the other people will fill in the gap and start talking. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, it's so important to practice pausing. So the second piece of the homework is to practice pausing. Even if people then take that space and start talking, because that's about them, not about you. And if you practice the pause, one thing that might come up for me when I first started doing it, I said, well, but it doesn't work in conversation because the other person just starts talking. But that leads to the other question that we were bringing up quite a bit, which is, what if I didn't say that? So when you pause and someone else just jumps in and starts talking, then it's a great time to think, how did that work? Did what I say still work without finishing my sentence, without finishing my thought?
Yeah.
And so it's a great time to reflect on that and still stay consistent with your practice of using pauses.
Okay, I think that's cool, because then you're trying to step out of like those ego protecting storytelling sharings, and really diving into the conversation more, because most of the time people probably already know what you were going to say, or what direction it was headed. So maybe indeed it wasn't necessary to finish the sentence, and it's okay. But I often find myself still wanting to finish the sentence and talking through the other, but that's really only for myself and not for the other person. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and you can use that as a moment to, if they then start to share, then ask follow-up questions, get curious, and get yourself out of the level 1 where you're just thinking about what you're going to say, and instead get curious about the other person.
Yeah.
And that's something we didn't talk about, but because I just mentioned it, I'll say that level 1 listening is just thinking about what they're saying, how it relates to you, and how you have a story that could relate to that. And then level 2 listening is getting curious about the other person, learning more about them, asking open-ended questions. And level 3 is paying attention to the energy in the container of the relationship. So as soon as you and I are talking, there's a container around us. Is that energy moving forward? Is that energy upbeat? Is that energy solemn? Whatever it is, it's still fine. It's just paying attention to that energy and maybe nurturing that energy in a certain direction, or seeing if the person is pulling you in a different direction. And so that's not part of the homework, but that was just mentioning that if you're using the pause and then you use that pause, and as soon as the other person is talking and they finish talking, you then ask a follow-up question instead of jumping into your thing. That's using the pause plus diving into level 2 listening.
Okay, yeah. Do you, when you talk about noticing the energy in the room and the energy of the conversation, is it like you're trying to notice the other person's energy in combination with your own energy in the conversation, or what you're trying to build up to? And like, would you recommend to try to get your energy to the same level as the other person, or to just what's the practical implication of noticing the energy? What are you going to do with the energy of the conversation if you know about it?
Yeah, and that's a great question. A lot of times a lot of us spend 90% of the time in level 1, right? Which is just, how am I going to respond? What do I have to say that's relevant to that? Ooh, there's a great story I have for the other person. And then it's this kind of competitive talking. And level 2 is not only getting curious about the other person, but feeling what are they drawing from you? What are they needing from you? And often it's just to be seen. Just to take up, part of taking up space is feeling that other people want you to take up space. Although it should come from the inside, it's very helpful to have other people interested in you, asking questions of you. And so when I'm trying to get in this space, I can even ask myself, what is that person drawing from me? What do they need from me? And things like my attention, I can't give that for 24 hours a day, so that is a limited resource. But other resources like my love is unlimited. When I give you my love, that doesn't mean that someone else doesn't get it. I can give my love to all of my friends, to tons and tons of people, and it's still, there's so much more left inside me. It's an unlimited resource. So a lot of times being seen, someone's pulling that they just want to feel loved, they want to feel cared for, they want to feel seen, is all unlimited resources, and that's the thing that most people are pulling from you. And within, so that's like level 2 moving to level 3, but that's still level 2 because you're feeling what the other person is drawing from you. And so it's not a transaction, but it's basically on this plane between you and me, right? There's a connection and there's energy moving back and forth of what are you drawing from me, what am I drawing from you? And that's both listening to each other and then what the energy is being drawn. And then the container, the energy in the container, is if we imagine that even though we're on the internet, we're in a room together. And that's, again, the same thing with public speaking and play. And why we use play in public speaking is because we're all in our head too much. We're not embodying. And so going to all 5 senses in level 3 of listening is, what is the texture like in the room? What is the temperature? What is the color? So if you and I are here in a room together, I would say there's some warm oranges towards red. There's been some green, blue-green optimism of the ocean. Mm-hmm. There's a flow of water. So there's this texture. And so that's really like the container. And if all of a sudden the container starts to get gray or feel a little black or heavy like mud, is that somewhere we want to go? Do we want to stay there for a little while and explore it? Or do we want to work together to get out of that? And it doesn't always have to be sunshine and roses and rainbows and unicorns, right? There's the only way that you truly experience that is if you experience the darkness and the black as well. Yeah. So it's just feeling when you walk in when you walk into a room at a new home, you look around and you can feel the person's warmth or maybe not their warmth, and you can feel whether they collect a lot of stuff or they don't. and then you just kind of live in that together and celebrate it together. It's part of who I am and who you are, that we make this room together, and then we decide together how we want to change it.
What do you think that happens when you fail to notice like the room or the vibe of the conversation? Do you more easily get stuck, or is there or a lot of friction?
Yeah, there can be a friction, and a lot of times it'll come across, and this can be level 2 or level 3, but level 3, if you don't recognize the temperature of the room, it's like you come into a funeral and you're like, hey, great to see you guys, this is amazing, and people are like, you know,
Yeah.
our mother just died, and so that is often, that can be because you don't recognize the temperature of the room, and it can also be because you're not comfortable jumping into that energy level. So that goes back to conductor and what I was saying about if I used to go into the lower levels, I would do it with a smile and it wasn't cohesive. My energy, emotion, and the things I was saying and the way I was saying it were not all aligned, and so I came across as inauthentic. So, for instance, if I were to come into a funeral and be like, hey guys, this is amazing, then I would disrupt the energy. Not only would I not fit in and I wouldn't be able to connect, but I would disrupt the room. I would disrupt the energy of the room. So it's both about me being able to connect with people and being able to, all of us have the whole range to access to be able to kind of come into that room. If you go down to level 2, you and I connecting, if I'm coaching you, not even on speaking, but if I'm just coaching you on coaching, and you come in like, oh my God, I've had this week you just wouldn't believe, and da da da, and I'm like, hey, but this is about fulfillment, and this is about your dreams, and let's just jump into it. We're never going to connect because you're coming in at a 3 and I'm at a 7. So how do we then start a communication when you can't trust that I've met you where you're at? And so as any coach, you meet the person where they're at and you go to that space with them, and then you go on the journey with them where that takes you. You don't try to force them up into you, or just stay at your level and they stay at theirs, and then you're never communicating. And it goes back to that 80% of communication is nonverbal. So why are we so worried about how we talk when it's more about aligning your energy and aligning your ability to go into different emotional states while you talk, instead of just, did I say but or and too many times?
Okay, yeah, thanks. That was a very detailed answer, and I think that's something I can use in my own life, because sometimes you just start when you're like meeting a friend, you just start at different energy levels, and for example, if you were the one that came in really energized or hyped, or the other way around, then that's frustrating at that point for both parties, because I find it frustrating when I'm in a low energy that the other person is trying to force me into it and is trying to force his enthusiasm on me, and I'm just like, whatever, leave me here, leave me alone. And the other person is like, dude, come on, I'm hyped. This is a way better state to be in than what you're in like now. So just join me. But that's not really working. But if you first try to really see the energy state of the other and try to respect that and try to level, you can then try to move towards the preferred energy state together.
Yeah, and I would suggest that it's not that that each person, yourself included, is whole and resilient and creative and perfect, just as you are. So I would suggest not to try to match their energy and then move them to where you want them.
Yeah.
But that you dance together.
Yeah, yeah.
And because you're developing all these skills and these muscles in conductor to be able to jump to whatever energy state serves you and serves that moment, you can jump into that energy state in a very playful way and say, well, why don't I just try this out? He's there, and if I go up there, then I can connect with him better or her better.
Yeah.
And I'll just try it out for a while.
Yeah.
And just live in the moment and don't worry about where you want the person to end up. And you may end up having a more fun time there, or they may end up saying, wow, Pim, this is way too hard work, right? And like move down from there. So it's the greatest gift to be able to connect with someone.
Yeah, yeah.
And I did have a third piece of homework. So
yeah.
we have the
Tell me about it.
so we have the active listening about removing any thoughts you have while someone else is speaking. You're removing it. And then we have the pause, where you pause, and if someone even interrupts you, don't worry about it, and just keep practicing putting pauses in and not thinking during your pauses, just grounding during your pauses.
Yeah.
And then the final thing is to end strong. Just like a gymnast always sticks their landing and throws their arms up, anytime you're speaking, speak shorter and end strong.
Okay, I think that's also something I can benefit from, because I noticed myself that when I'm explaining something, I quite often end with, yeah, so that's about it, or yeah, something like that. And that's that's ending weak.
And do you know why that is?
I think because I'm like not sure if what I said was correct or complete or something like that.
So and there's science behind it, in that when if we're in a good public speaking mode, we're in a flow. It's natural, our Google autocomplete's going, and as soon as we stop speaking, we shift back over to our analytical mind, our cerebral cortex, and it starts to analyze. How did that go? Did that sound right? Did that not sound right? And it actually reminds me of, I was sharing this last night in some coaching I was doing. It reminds me when I had a horse riding student who was jumping fences, and she would do a course of, say, 5 or 6 fences. And after the final fence, and it didn't matter if she was doing 8 fences or 6 fences, every time after the final fence, the horse would just take off and start bucking and nearly throw her. And so if she was in a competition, of course, she could have a perfect run, but then that would be ruined because the horse would buck at the end. And she said, well, how in the world this is happening when sometimes it's 8 fences, sometimes it's 6, so how does the horse know that it's over? Because she left her flow and started thinking, okay, now the thing is over, and the horse could sense the shift out of flow and felt insecure and was kind of jumping up and down. And so what I recommended to her is look to the next fence. So if the course only has 8 fences, in your mind, look to the next fence, plan for the next fence, go around that corner to your 9th fence, even though you don't have one. And then right before you hit that 9th fence, then drop him to a trot and do your little circle and you're done. And that way, right after your 8th fence, he doesn't start bucking. What this means for public speaking is you can again use homework number 2, the pause. So you can finish your talk and your next jump is the pause, instead of analyzing. And in the pause, you focus on not thinking about it. That way you don't kind of finish and then get bucked off.
Okay, well, Emmy, thank you so much for this session. It was I really hoped at the beginning of this session that it was going to be as exciting and interesting as our normal coaching sessions always are, because I told you before the podcast I always think in those coaching sessions that we just should record them and publish them as a podcast, because they're just enormously interesting to have those exercises and then our reflection on those exercises. So I'm really glad how this turned out, and I really appreciate you being here as my first guest, and thank you so much for all these amazing stories and explanations.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me, and I'm so honored to be your very first.
Thank you. And I'm going into the snow, I think. Have a nice day yourself as well.
Yes, have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.